everyone. Welcome to, it's 2 bars and 1 dole, I guess. 2 bars and 1 dole here on Fantasy Points live stream presented by Underdog Fantasy, and we have a very special one. There we go. Kukanis put me in the middle where I belong here because I'm going to get to that really quickly. All right, here we go. This is what's going on today. It's a battle. It's mono-e-mono. It's head-to-head. It's face-to-face, fist-to-fist, whatever you want to call it. I'm Joe Dolan, and I will be moderating this event. I'll be the Earl Hebner of today's events. We are calling this 2 bars, this special live stream, WorstTaek battle, whatever you want to call it. So what we're going to have is Scott and Graham presenting arguments for players they like, and then maybe if we have time later, some players they don't like, and then the other guy gets a chance to fight back. And we're going to try to do this in the most, I guess, obnoxious way possible. And in a rare occasion for me, in a rare occurrence for me, I'm not the one who needs to be obnoxious. These two are going to be obnoxious. They're going to go at each other's throats. I just want to remind everybody, WorstTaek, 2 bars, take battle, whatever it is going to be a bloodbath. It's presented by Underdog Fantasy. Use code FANTASYPTS. You see it streaming right down there, boys. For up to $100 in bonus cash for your first deposit on Underdog Fantasy. That's a 100% match up to $100. That's pretty freaking good. I've been getting some action in before I go to the Dominican Republic, where guys, total amateur move, and you can start by roasting me for this. I started a slow draft a couple of days ago, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. I'm not going to be able to do that out of the country.
I've done that before, too. The DJ, look. The DJ in you just knows no rest. You can't rest. There's no rest.
Oh, absolutely horrible. Oh, just idiot. Anyway, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to bring up a player. We're going to use that player's Underdog Fantasy ADP. For the most part, I'm going to start. The person starting is going to be for that player. Why that player should be drafted at ADP or at all. And then the retort. Well, let's see. It might get nasty. So we'll let the everything kind of work organically. We'll let everything flow the way it should. So let me introduce our participants. Graham Barfield up there. Graham, do you still have that horrendous hair? I was just about to say, before we get started, Joe, actually, Scott, this is really just for you. Let's go over the ground rules. Rule number 1, there's no touching of the hair or face. And that's it. That's the only ground rule we have for this whole show. No touching of the hair or face. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, Graham, you look real good. You look real good. I'm eyeing your jugular. I'm salivating over your jugular. I'm coming for that. I'm coming for the throat, baby.
Yeah. Scott got his hair cut today, and I wish I could find the tweet, but I remember a couple of tweets a couple years ago. The worst thing to ever happen to barbers was Peaky Blinders coming out. Everybody thinking they can pull off that haircut. Scott thinks he's got the Arthur Shelby going on here. So we'll I don't have enough hair to have that kind of a haircut, but we'll get to that at a later date if y'all want to roast me for my hairline. Somebody yelled at me, by the way, on for the Ross Tucker podcast for wearing a flat brim hat. I have a wide face. It looks weird. It looks like I'm squeezing my face if I have a really bent. I'm sorry, I can't deal with that. I'm sorry about that.
Pro tip, anytime you want to get your build lined up, take your hat, go like this, kind of pull it to the side of the corner of your head, and that's where your bill should land.
Wait, can you do it again, Graham?
Fernando Rodney it a little bit.
What's that?
Graham, can you do that again? Can you do it again?
Yeah. You just build up to the face like this.
Right, perfect. I just put that.
You don't let people actually see you do that in public, do you?
What's that?
You don't let people actually see you do that in public, do you?
No, fuck no. Of course not. You do that before you leave the house, man. It's the fit.
Okay, all right. Well, sometimes you got to take it off and adjust and all that stuff. Anyway, all right, let's get started here. Edwin's already chiming in saying Graham's WorstTaek Coors Diesel is a drinkable beer. Here's the way I look at it. Is it an IPA? No. Is it beer? Yes. Therefore, it's a drinkable beer.
Dude,
That's how I view a drinkable beer. Anyway, all right, let's kick this off. This was Scott's idea. They want to go at each other's throats. So now I'm going to start it off, and I'm going to kick it off with Scott here. And we're going to kick it off with a player who was in the news today. I mean, could Scott have even lined this up to get roasted any better than he did already? A player in the news today, RB11, going off the board on Underdog Fantasy in round 2. That is Saddlebags Lenny. Leonard Fournette, who's carrying around, like the rest of us, about 10 extra pounds. Scott loves him in the second round, RB11. The floor is yours. I'm now going to shut up, Mr. Barrett.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for doing that, Graham, because I clipped that and I'm going to eviscerate you on Twitter as a meme. So much appreciated. Yeah, I just have a question for you. And that's, do you know what an elite fantasy asset looks like, Graham? Because I don't think you do. I don't think you do. Leonard Fournette may look like Chris Farley in spandex, but he looks like Christian McCaffrey in the spreadsheets. So if you exclude week 15, he exited early due to injury, but by the way, was on pace for 18 carries and 14 targets. Then he ended his season hitting an 80% snap share in each of his final 3 games, uber bell cow status, averaged 29.8 fantasy points per game over that span. And then over his final 10, remember the last 3, uber bell cow, before that was just at like a 69% snap share, but final 10 games, 14.7 carries, 6.3 targets, 20.4 XFP, 103.0 yards from scrimmage, and 21.3 fantasy points per game. Put that out, extrapolated over a full season. Those numbers would have ranked 15th in carries, 2nd in targets, 2nd in XFP, 5th in yards from scrimmage per game, 4th in fantasy points per game, just 0.7 fantasy points per game off of Jonathan Taylor, the RB1. And yet he's being drafted as what? The RB11, RB12 by ADP and falling because he's a little thick. Well, guess what? You know I like him thick.
Thick with 2 C's or 3 C's? Because I'm pretty sure Fournette just ate all the C's in the thickness. Dude, he's too. Okay, Scott, you're drafting Eddie Lacy in the second round. That's what you're after. Thick thighs, thick ass. That's it. That's all you're looking for.
Listen, my man is hungry. My man's coming to eat. He needs to get fed. So this is good way. I about my platter fetish. And Fournette fits the bill, baby.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely, if he doesn't fit the bill, he just ate the bill. No, I actually love Fournette too, but look, man, I mean, you got to knock him down in the rankings for every pound that he's gained, and he said he's gained 10 pounds. He looks like he's gained 25. He's out here looking.
Wait, listen, you're trying to tell me in June he's out of? I mean, it's June, Graham. June. Yeah. You're trying to talk to me about practice in June. Practice June.
Listen, Lombardi Lenny needs to become aerobics Lenny, all right? Before we get back
Tom Brady is going to put him on the TB12 method. He's going to eat nothing but salmon and asparagus every meal, and he's going to be looking like an Adonis come September. But it's June. It's June, Graham.
All right.
June.
I mean, my rebuttal was written for me this morning when we saw those pictures of Fournette's fat rolls slipping over the side of his too tight T-shirt. So I'll just let the picture be the proof, man.
All right. As somebody who has fat rolls, and I'm going to the beach this weekend, and I don't like the beach, but it's one of those all-inclusive things. Looks like Lenny had himself some all-inclusive resorts in his past after signing that new contract. I got to be honest, though. Mr. Barrett kind of presented a more well-rounded argument. No insult to Leonard well-rounded Fournette. You might say that he's well-rounded in multiple ways right now. But round 1, Leonard Fournette goes to Scott Barrett. And I understand, Graham, you're just yelling at him. So maybe the guy presenting the case has the easier burden here, or the lesser burden in this court of law. But I'm judging for Scott Barrett 1-0. Leonard Fournette for Scott Barrett. Graham, you have another running back coming off an injury. Guy who played in the pros. I saw you tweeting about him. I saw you were literally doing your research live earlier today. He is the RB15, a third-round ADP carrying on Underdog Fantasy. Cameron Akers of the Los Angeles Rams, who averaged 2.7 yards per carry in the playoffs last year, but in unprecedented circumstances. The floor is yours.
Yeah, listen, we always want workhorse running backs on great offenses. And guess what? Cam Akers popped his Achilles in whatever it was, June, July, last summer. Popped his Achilles, getting ready for the season. Didn't play all year, got 5 carries in week 18. Basically didn't practice, didn't play all year. And guess what? He was immediately installed as the team's workhorse back in the playoffs. Sony Michel was running fine, by the way. Sony Michel had a fine season. He started 7 games to close out the year. But no, Sean McVay came in and said, no, I still want my guy, Cam Akers, to handle the ball. He got a 75% carry share in the playoffs. Again, Michel was healthy. Henderson came back for that final Super Bowl game. Still got a big workload. Only 3 running backs last year, Scott. You literally jerk off to your spreadsheets of who's getting the most touches. Cam Akers is that guy. 3 running backs last year got a 75% carry share. Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris, and Joe Mixon. Now, granted, okay, a small sample, 2.57 yards per carry, blah, blah, blah. 2.57 yards per carry. They faced the Cardinals, which was a top 10 run defense last year. The Bucs, the best run defense last year. The 49ers, the second best run defense last year. And the Bengals, which, okay, 13 for 21, not great. Still, got the big workload. That was with Darrell Henderson back. I think you're buying Cam Akers at his floor right now. His price has actually slipped even more, Joe. It's not RB15, it's RB17 now. He slipped into like 42, 43 overall. And look, okay, sure. Maybe he doesn't have the explosiveness he once had. Maybe Darrell Henderson mixes in a little bit more than we think. All that being said, he's a fine RB2 at worst. And at best, you can sell yourself on the ceiling of a 10-touchdown ceiling attached to a great offense. He was always a good receiver at Florida State. I think Cam Akers has league-winning potential in the 4th round of underdog drafts right now.
All right, Scott, your turn to respond to that.
Graham, we've been friends for a long time. I've always had a lot of respect for you and the work that you've done, your opinions and analysis. But I don't anymore. It's one of the most moronic things I've ever heard. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Oh, there's an injury discount on Cam Akers. But it's the same injury discount you're getting on Bronco Nagurski. They're both dead. Name a running back who has come back from this injury. Andre Brown, Edgar Bennett, Donta Foreman, Marlon Mack, dead, and dead. Foreman was a 3rd-round pick who ran a 4.45 40 at 234 pounds. Done nothing. Mack barely had 30 touches last year. And your boy Cam Akers, he averaged 2.4 yards per carry in his return.
It was 2.57, damn it. You give him that 1/10 of a yard.
We're quibbling over 1/10. It's not that strong of a take. Not a value. One of the worst picks you can make at that ADP.
Damn. This is coming from you, and you were a Cakers guy all over the. I mean,
I'm an Achilles is a death knell guy. I loved him, but yeah, R.I.P. Pour one out.
I think Cam Akers is going to be a bellwether right now. In much the same way, by the way, we're not talking about this guy. No, we're not talking about Drake London today. Okay, in much the same way that I think Drake London is going to be like the bellwether for does this contested catch thing matter and all that. Cam Akers did something unprecedented. The problem is what he did unprecedented wasn't necessarily good. And Alex Smith came back and we all rooted for him. And it was incredible that he got back and he wanted to just prove that he could get back. But he ended up having to retire because he just wasn't very good. I don't think Cam Akers is that. Scott, I would have given you this in a runaway if you had mentioned Darrell Henderson being pretty cheap and Kyron Williams breaking his foot in camp. But I think, Graham, he got you. I think Cam Akers at this point, I think Scott made the better case against it. 2-0 Scott Barrett. Graham, you've got to catch up.
No.
Now.
Joe, we got to schedule a battle royale, you and I. No, 2-0. This is ridiculous.
I was going to be on your side here with Akers, but all right. Let's Scott also is he's tickling the Dolan, the tickling the jewels here a little bit, talking about some of my guys. We're going to get to one that I am very interested to hear his take on. And Graham, because you've been in on this guy, you're going to have to argue against one of your boys. Scott is in on Adam Thielen at wide receiver 35, round 7. He fell a little bit farther in ADP than I thought he was going to. Let's see what Scott has to say about Adam Thielen.
Okay, this is one of my guys. He's been one of my guys for a long time, and I know for Graham as well. I want to address one thing. He is not sneaky athletic or deceptively athletic. He's just like a freak athlete. He was a 3-sport athlete in high school. Football wasn't even his best sport. He ran a 4.45 40 at the combine without ever practicing that event. On YouTube, there's a video of him running the fastest 3-cone ever. This guy is just like a freak athlete. Over the last 5 seasons, he's finished 11th, 7th, 44th, 11th, and then last year 15th in fantasy points per game. 2019 looks rough, but that was an injury outlier year. He was averaging 17.3 fantasy points per 4 quarters, which would have ranked 7th best. And then he had the hamstring injury and spent the rest of the season playing decoy mode or only part-time. And then last year, too, he averaged 17.4 fantasy points per game. That would have ranked 7th best prior to the ankle injury he suffered in week 13. So if you give him those injury discounts, he would have finished 11th, 7th, 7th, 11th, and 7th in fantasy points per game. Insane value at wide receiver 35. Now, there's one flaw you could poke in this is all right, well, he's a little injury prone. And this is where I'm going to get some heat for that, but that's okay. It's I got a Whoop. They don't sponsor us, so whatever. But I listened to his interview on the Whoop podcast, and he was saying, I get it, he's 32 years old. He was saying no. Unironically, I was in the best shape of my life last year. I took it so seriously. I was the fastest I've ever been. Everyone was saying it. You look amazing. I was the fastest in the best shape of my life last year. And the injury was a total fluke injury. Edwin Porras backs that up. It was one of those injuries where he got tackled weird and anyone would have had the ankle injury he had. So massive, massive discount. I'm all in. And I believe it. I want to believe best shape of his life.
All right, Graham, your turn.
Listen, I mean, if you want to be in the business of taking 32-year-old white wide receivers who have had their efficiency dip in 4 straight seasons as your wide receiver 3 in fantasy, by all means, go ahead. You can have them. Take them. Justin Jefferson is the alpha dog now. 30% target share last year. Even in games where Adam Thielen was playing, his target share was, I think, 26%. He had a ridiculous 18 end zone targets last year. Jefferson did. That doubled Thielen. In their games played together, Jefferson had 12 end zone targets to Thielen's 7. So he still had more touchdown opportunities. Look, I don't think another receiver has made me more money over the last 4 or 5 years than Adam Thielen. But look, man, the train has to end somewhere. And I feel like this is it. The injuries have piled up. You could say he was in the best shape of his life last year, whatever. This is a new year. This is 2022. I don't care about his whoop skills last year, or whatever his whoop rating was last year. That doesn't matter to me now. I'm looking into trying to project this year. And projecting this year, Justin Jefferson's the top dog, and Thielen's old.
All right. Now, since this is not necessarily a scientific battle, I have to quabble with something. I don't even know if that's a word, but who cares? I'm going to have to quabble with something Graham said here, okay? First and foremost, you said 32-year-old white wide receivers, okay? Literally, the first 2 white wide receivers who came to mind for me were Wes Welker and Julian Edelman. Wes Welker, at age 32, scored a career-high 10 touchdowns. Julian Edelman, at age 33, had a career-high 1,117 yards receiving. Joe.
Who was throwing them the ball? Tom effing Brady. Unless Kirk Cousins.
No, you're wrong, actually. Welker was Peyton Manning.
Oh, God. That's
Kirk Cousins can get Adam Thielen the football. It's 3-0.
Yes.
No.
We want to make this
Graham,
let's
you have
dog
gotta
pile
catch
on
up here,
Graham.
man.
I love this.
I am sick of it. Absolutely sick of it.
I didn't know this was a tag
Well,
team battle, but I'm here for
Scott's next one is going to be
It's turned
all right,
into a
all right,
team.
Graham. If you don't win this one, I'm calling it up. I'm calling the match.
It's a
Because
blowout.
yours
Let's do it.
is Gabriel Davis as wide receiver 28 in the 6th round. I've started to see him go earlier than that. But Gabriel Davis, Buffalo Bills, you're down 3-0. Is Gabe Davis going to save your ass the way he should have saved Buffalo's ass before they forgot Tyreek Hill existed?
Yeah, it's not feeling good going into battle here with Gabe Davis. Probably the most contentious player on the board right now. But listen, Gabe Davis is like, it's ironic we were talking about Thielen here because it's kind of a similar scenario, kind of like what Scott was saying. Before Thielen was Thielen, we only had like a couple of games to go off of, and that's the same thing for Gabe Davis. We all know the 8-201 4-touchdown hammer last year, but even before all that, in a small sample, Davis was extremely efficient. Among the 90 qualifying wide receivers, Gabe Davis was 12th in yards per route run. He was 100th of a yard right behind Tyreek Hill in terms of yards per route run efficiency. Now, granted, we've never seen Gabe Davis do this in a full season. He was behind Emmanuel Sanders last year. He didn't get a full-time role because Cole Beasley was there, but those two guys are gone now. He is locked in as the number 2 wide receiver in a Josh Allen-led offense. Josh Allen's going to throw for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns one year. It's going to happen. It could be this year. This Bills team is one of the most pass-heavy teams in the league once you adjust for game script. Last year, they were actually the 2nd most pass-heavy team in close games behind only the Bucs. So we've got an extremely efficient player on a very pass-heavy team, and he's the number 2 target on that team, and he's still not being drafted as a wide receiver 2. He's right there on the wide receiver 2-3 borderline. I want all the Gabe Davis this year. I think he's one of those guys where it just feels like, sure, okay, throw out the whole he hasn't started yet. He was behind Manny Sanders. I don't care about all that. I'm trying to project this year, and Gabe Davis has the full encompassing of a league winner in 2022.
I knew this one was going to get heated because, like, literally when we've been going through, I know at some point one of you guys is going to have to try to tear down a player you actually like, and that's never fun. That's like what they had you do in debate class in high school. But I knew this one was going to be spicy because I know Graham and Scott actually disagree on this one. Scott, take the floor.
Grammy. Graham. He had one good game, Graham.
What?
How many good games he had, Graham? He had one good game. I can't even spell or pronounce Alamedi Zacchaeus, but at least he had 2 good games. Rashad Perriman, he had like 4 good games. Gabriel Davis, he only had 1 good game, Graham. At least Rashad Perriman has cracked 600 yards for 1 season in his career. Gabe Davis has never done it once, and yet he's being drafted ahead of Tyler Lockett, Devonta Smith. You're trying to tell me this dude is better than Tyler Lockett and Devonta Smith? He couldn't even see the field behind Cole Beasley, age 33, another old-ass white wide receiver, and Emmanuel Sanders, age 35. Those guys stink, and they're not even on a team anymore. 1 good game, Graham. Just 1.
I'm counting more than 1. I mean, if you just completely forgot the 582 he dropped on the Panthers, he had a great game before that, right before that against the Bucs in a part-time role. But go ahead. You can just forget those games. It's fine.
All right. Here's where I'm supposed to be an impartial observer. We've seen some leaks from the Supreme Court, and I don't think even the judges on the highest court are impartial observers. Scott, I'm going to be honest with you here. You would have had to produce a Gabriel Davis autopsy photo. And even then, I might say that's fake, like Tupac Shakur's, and I still might side with Graham. I am biased here. I'll fully admit it. This is no holds barred. The Bills might be the pass-heaviest offense in the entire NFL. Gabriel Davis is the number 2 target in that offense. I am getting, and look, I have to pull out the Greg Cosell. I'm not saying this guy's going to be a Hall of Famer. I'm getting T.O. with Jerry Rice vibes here. Graham Barfield, you are on the board, man. And that was because you strategically picked a guy who I love. Now,
Damn it.
Now, here is the problem.
No, wait. You can't give me a point and then just immediately kick me. Oh, it wasn't because your debate was great or you made a good argument. It was just because I like the guy too.
No, but I agree with all your points. I don't just like him just to like him.
Uh-huh.
I like all your points. No, he was an underutilized
Scott, how much did you pay
player.
Joe before the show? How much did you pay Joe before the show?
Underutilized. Dude, I gave you a point. You won that. Here's the problem, though. Scott has another one of my guys next. And you know he's one of my guys. Russell Gage of the Buccaneers, wide receiver 44, round 9. Graham, you're playing from behind, my friend. Scott, sing the song I know you're going to sing.
There's absolutely no way I lose this round because I picked a guy who is just such an obscene value, mispriced by literally 6 full rounds. So he had arguably the league's toughest wide receiver schedule last year. His natural positions in the slot, where he's run 60% of his routes over his career. But last season, he faced a defense ranking top 10 in fantasy points per game allowed to slot wide receivers in a whopping 7 of 14 games. That's 50% of his total games. Really obscene. I've never seen anything like it. And so he underwhelmed in those tough matchups. He averaged just 5.2 fantasy points per game. But the other 50% of games, he averaged 9.3 targets, 18.7 fantasy points per game. He has a much softer schedule this year. The offensive environment is way better in Tampa Bay, which had 41% more passing yards, 2.2 times as many passing touchdowns as Atlanta last season. He was personally recruited by the GOAT, Tom Brady, who has always targeted slot wide receivers at one of the highest rates in the league. And that's equally true of the Bruce Arians scheme, which Byron Leftwich will be running. Remember, I was ahead of the curve on the Chris Godwin breakout. Why? Because of the Bruce Arians scheme and slot wide receivers in that scheme. And guess what? Last season, all 3 Tampa Bay wide receivers finished as wide receiver 1s by fantasy points per game. But now Antonio Brown is gone. Chris Godwin could miss 10, 12 weeks, still recovering from an ACL injury. He's the wide receiver 50 by ADP. I'd take him wide receiver 30, wide receiver 26. Shit, this is another landslide victory for me.
Graham, you got to have something good here, man.
Scott, I'll just leave you with this. It's real simple, man. It's real simple. Russell Gage is so bad at football that even the talent-deficient Falcons don't want him. They didn't even want him. They didn't even offer him a contract. He's so bad. They need receivers so bad that they're out here trading 7th-round picks for Bryan Edwards, but they can't even keep their own guy, Russell Gage. That's the guy you want to keep. That's the guy you want to attach your brand to. Be my guest. Be my guest.
I'm disgusted. You could even say that. How can you even? One of the most inept organizations in football. You don't know their head from their ass.
You just say organization like you're a hockey GM. Anyway,
am I gonna get dinged a point for that?
Arthur Blank just runs one of the biggest companies in all of the world at Home Depot, and
it doesn't mean he's good at running a football team.
Yeah, well, the Falcons have just been, a 25-year plus staple in the city of Atlanta. They've had no drama at all. Atlanta's had no drama in their history at all. None.
Well, let's also put this out here, though, and Graham. This is a team that was very close to acquiring Deshaun Watson, and that looks worse by the day. And they did their homework on him. Now, after Calvin Ridley left the Falcons last season, Russell Gage had 79 targets, Kyle Pitts had 66. Are you telling me that Kyle Pitts, who's a freak of nature, was getting fewer targets than a horrendously bad football player?
Listen,
I love that Joe's on the team, man. He's on the team.
Are you telling me that Tom Brady texted Russell Gage, hey, come to the Bucs, and Gage had to be like, wait, this is actually Tom Brady? Tom Brady, who stood across the field from him the last 2 seasons and watched him play?
Who knows a talented wide receiver better, Graham? You were the GOAT of football. I think
we just
Tom
talked
Brady.
about Wes Welker and Julian Edelman. Russell Gage can very well be Wes Welker and Julian Edelman.
Oh boy!
I would not be shocked at all if he led the Buccaneers in receptions. Mike Evans is going to lead him in fantasy points, but receptions very well could be Russell Gage. Scott's up 4-1. Graham, I want to give you this one just because just to make it interesting. Fortunately for you, you've got an easy case to make here right now with Brandon Cooks of the Houston Texans, wide receiver 27 in Underdog Fantasy ADP, round 6. I actually think Gabe Davis is going to start going ahead of Brandon Cooks soon.
He already is.
Graham, Brandon Cooks, a guy who had a blind spot on for years. Now it seems like the entire community has a blind spot on him.
Yeah, well, for what it's worth, Brandon Cooks is already going ahead of Gabe Davis, which is crazy. The steam on Gabe Davis is insane. But listen, I mean, Brandon Cooks is a borderline wide receiver 1 in fantasy, priced as a wide receiver 3. Davis Mills might be really good, like actually good. Brandon Cooks last year averaged 22% more targets and 32% more fantasy points per game in Mills' start. So he not only was getting the ball more, but he was way more efficient. And in those starts with Davis Mills, Cooks averaged 15.5 fantasy points per game. If you put that, just compared to the rest of the receivers last year, that would have made him the wide receiver 16, one spot behind Jalen Waddle, who's at 15.6 fantasy points per game. Look, I'm in the business of just taking incredible values in the 5th and 6th round at receiver. And Brandon Cooks, for my money, looks like one. All they did this offseason was bring in John Mechie. They drafted John Mechie coming off a popped ACL. His only target competition is Nico Collins, who might not be good at football. I think Brandon Cooks is locked in as an alpha wide receiver, and you're getting him as your number 3 or number 4, depending on how you treat your draft.
Scott, you have to argue against Brandon Cooks. We'll fully admit, not the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, I have to say that was excellent analysis, Graham. I just have one question. What team does he play for? I could just rest my case here.
That would be the Houston Texans.
The worst team in football, helmed by a no-name sophomore quarterback.
I'm sorry. The worst team in football. The Jaguars still exist. The Jaguars
actively tanking for the number 1 overall pick, which the Jaguars aren't. Oh, I'm sorry, Graham. You're right. That's how league winners are drafted. Now imagine this. Let me walk you through a scenario, okay? Imagine it's Sunday morning, and you go to check your matchup for the week. Oh, who am I playing against? Oh, okay. They've got Jonathan Taylor. Oh, I have Jonathan Taylor RB1. Oh, awesome. He could single-handedly bury this dude against the Jaguars this week. Oh, and I've got Tyreek Hill against the Vikings. Cameron Dantzler runs a 4.6, 4.40, and Patrick Peterson is 48 years old. Okay, I'm looking good. Now let's see who my opponent has. Oh, okay. Derrick Henry RB1, Leonard Fournette RB2, not bad. Jamar Chase wide receiver 1. Damn. Oh wait, and then you see it, Graham. You see Brandon Cooks at wide receiver 2, and what do you think to yourself? I don't know what you think, but you ain't scared. I know that because you're never scared of Brandon Cooks. I want a lineup that strikes fear into the heart of the opponent. And Brandon Cooks may be good. He may be all the things you said. He may beat his ADP, but he ain't scaring anyone.
He might not be scaring anyone. However, I found this interesting. The Texans, they're tanking, all right? They might tank, blah, blah, blah. What did the Texans do in April? In an off season in which everybody who has WR next to their name is picking up and moving across the country. I mean, is there anybody who maybe had more justifiable reason to request a trade than Brandon Cooks? The Texans sign him to a $36 million guaranteed deal in April, 2 weeks before the draft. And that's a deal that is legitimately they're locked into for at least the next 2 years. Houston believes Brandon Cooks to be an important building block. Brandon Cooks, for whatever ungodly reason for him, believes in the Houston Texans. Maybe he likes Davis Mills. They view
He just
Brandon
doesn't want to
Cooks.
get traded for the 15th time in 14 seasons.
Well, you would think Brandon. You would think though. This is a guy the people in the comments have been talking down bad. I know Tribby loves Russell Gage too. He said Graham was down bad worse than the Yankees guy, whose girlfriend said she'd use her hall pass. And I would agree with that because he had to go against Russell Gage. But I'll tell you what, Brandon Cooks is produced with good quarterbacks. He's produced with bad quarterbacks. He's produced with unproven quarterbacks. A guy I didn't used to like is very affordable. Graham is still alive. It is 4-2.
Don't call it a comeback, baby.
And now, let me tell you, Scott, you picked some easy guys to defend, all right? You just couldn't help yourself. He's basically going undrafted. Antonio Brown. I mean, Scott's going to be touting Antonio Brown in 2047. All right, let's hear it now, Scott. Let's hear the Antonio Brown defense.
All right, so just remember that this is WorstTaek, which is a first take style debate. And I said I'm Scotty A. Smith, and Graham is Skip Barfless. So hold on. Graham, I want to address this issue. Graham, you know I am sensitive to the Celtic Holocaust. And I'm not going to sit here and defend Julius Caesar, but they only won the Gaelic Wars because of Germanic mercenaries. They were maniacs. They were uncontrollable savages. But the way Caesar tells it, one German was worth 40 Celts or 20 Romans. And so what I'm getting at is Antonio Brown is the perfect mercenary. An NFL team would be moronic not to try him out during the tail end of the season. He may say he's not going to play, but if I'm a GM, I'm still drooling over that potential of one of the greatest wide receivers all time who looked like he was in his prime last year, even with a busted up ankle, was carving up the Jets with some of the prettiest routes I've ever seen. He finished 4th in yards per route run last year, behind only Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel, and Devontae Adams. He's finished top 7 in yards per route run in 6 of his last 8 qualifying seasons. He ranks 8th in yards per route run since leaving the Steelers. That's ahead of Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, and any other trash wide receivers you're going to tout on this podcast. So I am still drafting him with my last pick in every single draft. There's the risk that, like I said, he might not get signed until halfway through the season or not signed at all, but that is a risk I am willing to take at a price tag of free for that upside.
All right, Graham. I mean, what do you even say to that?
Where do I even begin, Scott? With Antonio Brown, I could pick so many starting points for my argument against him, but I'll start here. And this is arguably the number one biggest red flag. He calls himself Mr. Big Chest. That's a red flag in and of itself. Anybody that calls themselves Mr. Big Chest, red flag in and of itself. He also once farted on a doctor. Who does that? Why are you trying to give your doctor pink eye? They're trying to help you, buddy. He farted on one of his doctors. He nixed a trade to the Buffalo Bills, who are about to win the Super Bowl this year. He could be still bummed with Josh Allen. And by the way, after he nixed that trade to the Bills, he showed up to Raiders camp in a hot air balloon, nearly froze his foot off in one of those cryogenic chamber things, got into a fight with Mike Mayock and got cut, also while refusing to practice because he refused to play with a very minor helmet change. He painted his old helmet over Steelers colors for the Raiders helmet in favor of this old helmet. And by the way, after all of this shit that he put together for the Raiders, the Bills, the Steelers at the end, he got to play with the GOAT, Tom Brady. And he still wasn't happy. He was number 1 in targets per route run last year, Scott. Number 1. Cooper Kupp was number 2. Justin Jefferson was number 3. Antonio Brown was number 1 in targets per route run, and he still wasn't happy. He ended up taking his clothes off in New York and then going and partying.
There's like 6 other things you're probably forgetting. I know.
Graham, honestly, here's the deal. You could have just said he's not on a team and got cut like Tom Brady's team the year after winning the Super. Scott, It's over for your boy, man. It's so over. Like you can get Odell Beckham in the last round of a best ball, or at least a round before. He's at least going to play this year. There is not a chance Antonio Brown's on an NFL team this year. Graham, you are catching up. It is 4-3. And let's not even get started on Scott's horrendous Stephen A. Smith impression. I mean, I don't even think we can put that on social media. It was that bad. Like it was horrible.
I thought I was Stephen A. Smith. Maybe I'll bust it out here.
No, you're Barfless.
Oh, that right. Yeah.
Scott, Graham, he left you a perfect opening here. And now here we go. Because I told him that like it's hard to come in here without some preconceptions. Here's a player I don't think I have a take on. Like a predisposed opinion, one way or the other. Graham, you like Justin Fields at ADP. He is QB 14. He's going off the board in round 11. I'm settling in for this one because this could be a good one.
Well, listen, you don't have a take, Joe, but you'll have a take after I'm done with this rant here. Justin Fields will be one of your most drafted quarterbacks. Let's take a look across the league. Who among the top 12 fantasy quarterbacks, among that group, who doesn't run? Okay, it's usually Tom Brady, fine. He's the GOAT. Aaron Rodgers, fine. League MVP back-to-back years. Kirk Cousins is always kind of flirting with that. But from then on, it's always guys who have some sort of upside as a runner. The Josh Allens, the Kyler Murrays, the Jalen Hurts, the Lamar Jacksons. Oh, I forgot to include Joe Burrow, so you can't ever count out Joe Burrow. But besides that, we want running quarterbacks in fantasy football. Why don't we want Justin Fields anymore? Okay, fine. He had 9, 10 bad starts with Matt Nagy, who is way in over his head. But Nagy finally let him run a little bit more at the end of last year, finally opened up the playbook, and Justin Fields magically became better. He finished as a top 12 fantasy quarterback in his final 4 games last year as a part of, running a lot more. And in those games, he averaged 8.5 carries per game. Now, granted, you can say Justin Fields was inaccurate. You can say Justin Fields can't throw deep. Fine. All of that might be true. You can also say his weapons stink. Sure, all of that might be true. But you know what? Fields might be one of the most athletic quarterbacks ever to enter the league. He has unbelievable untapped upside with his legs. He averaged just over 50 yards rushing per game last year. In his final 7 starts, he averaged just over 50 yards rushing per game. That was kind of on par with Jalen Hurts. I want Konami code quarterbacks at cheap prices. And look, coaching is going to be much better this year. I can't say the weapons are going to be much better, but I kind of don't really think that matters all that much. We want Fields for his legs. And I think Fields, man, he's got plenty of upside at his QB 14, QB 15, QB 16 cost. Give me Justin Fields on every team as my number 2 quarterback.
All right, Scott, let's see this because this is, I think the door's open here for you, but I'm really pulling myself in to listen to this. I want to hear this. Scott, your turn.
Yeah. So, again, I really like you, Graham. I don't read your content. I read your content about as much and about as well as Justin Fields reads defenses, which is to say, not at all. Like he has upside as a runner, sure, but he has massive downside as a passer, like maybe even bench-worthy downside because he wasn't at all good. 180 passing yards per start, more interceptions than touchdowns. You said, you could say he has a bad supporting cast, and I will say it. I'm going to read you a list of names. Darnell Mooney, Velus Jones, Chris Finke, Isaiah Coulter, David Moore, Daz Newsome, Byron Pringle, Dante Pettis, Kevin Shaw, Tajee Sharp, Equanimous St. Brown, Nasimba Webster. That's who Fields will be throwing the ball to this year.
I know like 3 of those guys, all right? You forgot.
That's what I was going to say. I do this for a living, and I know 3 of those guys. So, let me pass on that. Not a big fan of that.
All right. This is the toughest one for me yet because I think it's interesting that neither one of you brought up Jalen Hurts. As a matter of fact,
I brought up Hurts. Yeah, I brought up Hurts.
All right. Well, guess what? Then, I saw.
Make it 4-4. You know you want to do it.
Okay. Let me see here. Scott, you have an extremely valid point, but here's the thing with Hurts that I'm struggling to grapple with. Because Hurts did not have good weapons last year. He did. Devontae Smith was his only viable wide receiver. I think you can make an argument that the Bears' only viable receiver right now is Darnell Mooney, although I think, Byron Pringle's kind of a guy, and maybe Velus Jones does something. I think Dallas Goedert is better than Cole Kmet. The Bears have a horrendous offensive line. I'm not sure how much that affects the designed run game for Justin Fields. I am siding with Graham here, and I'm going to tell you why. Because he's right on about the ADP. There's just I don't see, and here's the thing. It's the same ADP that Fields and Lance had last year. But here's the other part. Fields is guaranteed to start week 1. I'm not 100% sure Trey Lance is guaranteed to start week 1 right now. I mean, I think it's like 95%, but not 100.
Yeah.
Kyle Shanahan backtracking a little bit today. Trey Lance is going ahead of Justin Fields in ADP. I don't know. I'm kind of with it, man. I'm not a huge Justin Fields guy, but I think it was easier to make a case for him than against him because of his ADP. It's 4-4, and now we get really juicy because now it's players to fade. Now the guy starting is going to rip the player. And this is going to get interesting. Scott, you're going to kick it off with a guy who was, I'm flat out tell you, he was my MVP last year in all of fantasy football. Mark Andrews, he's got a second-round ADP. He is the tight end 2 in fantasy football. He's expensive, but he was awesome last year. Let's make the case against Mark Andrews.
He was awesome last year, but he's been one of my favorite players and one of my most rostered players in dynasty leagues. Over the last 3 seasons, he's finished 5th, 4th with 12.2 fantasy points per game. And then last year, 1st in fantasy points per game, 17.5. That's a 43% jump in fantasy points per game year over year. Now you have to ask yourself, what was the catalyst behind that jump? He was just as efficient as he's always been, actually lower in yards per route run than his career average last year. This was only his 3rd best season in targets per route run, so you can't put it on volume. Route percentage jumped from 78% to 84%, so very small. What changed was a massive increase in routes run per game, 23.3 to 38.9. That's a 67% jump. That is not sustainable. His 17.5 fantasy points per game, not sustainable. Over the last 3 seasons, Baltimore has finished first, and then 19th in point differential. Their RB1, their RB2, their RB3 all suffered season-ending injuries in training camp. So Baltimore had no other choice but to lean massively pass-heavy, and the results were not great, with Baltimore finishing below 500 for the first time since 2015. And it's also curious to me that Mark Andrews was so much better with Tyler Huntley under center, 22.2 fantasy points per game instead of 15.9. I get that the departure of Marquise Brown opens things up, but just, again, that 67% jump in routes run per game, there's no way that's happening. Lamar Jackson being pass heavy, that's not what the team wants. It was not effective. They're going to go back to their massively run heavy ways with a healthy J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, and it's going to hurt Mark Andrews. So I cannot get on board taking him round 2. Only 2 spots behind Travis Kelce.
Listen, I actually agree with everything that you just said, but let me tell you why you're wrong. I say this as someone who has I've done 40 best ball drafts. I think I've taken Mark Andrews 1 time, but you're wrong still. I'm wrong. You know why? Because he has the best nickname of all time. It's freaking Mandrews. Anytime he rips off a 25-yard play, Anytime he scores a touchdown, you get to text your buddies just out of context, Mandrews in all caps. That alone, Scott, is the reason why you should want Mandrews on your team.
He's Boy Drews this year, Graham. He's Boy Drews. He was Mandrews last year. Stop living in the past.
All right. Scott, you made an incredibly good argument. Here's the thing that I thought was the most interesting part. I think the Ravens are intentionally dumbing down their offense again. They tried to expand it. It didn't work. They traded away. Now, here's part of the argument for Andrews. They traded away Hollywood Brown, but I think Bateman's going to get those targets. I love Mark Andrews. I have not pulled the trigger in the second round once. Scott, it's 5-3.
Oh, don't tell me.
It's 5-4. I'm sorry, Graham. I took a point away from you. It is 5-4. Graham, you've got to take one of these. Antonio Gibson. Now, here's the thing. You guys are all doing players that I am fading. I'm just going to see who makes the better arguments here. Antonio Gibson as the RB18 in round 4 is an easy fade for me, Scott. I'll fully admit that. I want to see what your argument is against him. Graham, Antonio Gibson, you're fading him at RB18. Lay out the case.
Well, listen, unlike Scott, I'm not picking layup fades here. I'm actually picking players that are worthy of debating, and Antonio Gibson is actually worthy of debating. Fading Mark Andrews in the second round, okay, come on. He's coming off a historic season. He had a great stretch run last year with a quarterback who's not even playing anymore. Antonio Gibson, this is actually worth debating. Listen, hear me out. What if Antonio Gibson just isn't that good? You look at Antonio Gibson's efficiency metrics over the last years, and you're not going to like the picture it paints. He is 41st out of 66 qualifying running backs in yards after contact. He's 28th in missed tackles forced per carry, which is one of the most it's probably the best efficiency metric if you're looking for running back skill. And he was 22nd out of 55 running backs in yards per route run. Not great. Washington just made it a priority to bring J.D. McKissic back. They spent a top 100 pick on another big back in Brian Robinson. And Antonio Gibson is still going in the 5th, 6th round of drafts. I don't understand it. I think Antonio Gibson is the true definition of a dead zone running back who doesn't have access to his team's passing down work and third down work, and he might lose some early down work to Brian Robinson, who I actually think is a pretty good player. I don't get anybody taking Antonio Gibson in the 6th round. And frankly, I probably wouldn't take him until like the 8th or 9th round where you feel like the running backs are correctly priced, like Damian Harris, Cordarrelle Patterson. All of those guys have a similar archetype, similar projection as Antonio Gibson. I think there's still 2 to 3 rounds of lag in Gibson's ADP, and I am outright fading.
All right, Scott, let's hear it.
Graham said, what if he isn't that good? Graham, he's the next CMC. His offensive coordinator said it himself. He's the next CMC, Graham. Are you telling me to fade CMC in round 6?
Staff keeps steaming him up and then doing the complete opposite of what they say. But sure, he's the next Christian McCaffrey. Okay.
Graham, he was a wide receiver in college, Graham, and now he's playing a dramatically new position. CMC wasn't CMC overnight. It at least took until like the 8th grade until CMC was CMC. He's only had 2 years playing the position, which means, a former wide receiver in college, the next CMC, he's only going to get better, Graham. Oh, and did I mention? You mentioned some efficiency metrics. He had a fracture in his shin, Graham. Most running backs miss 7 weeks at a minimum with that sort of injury, Graham. And Graham, he still averaged 16.9 fantasy points per game over his final 8 games, 5 with at least 18.5. I'll draft the next CMC in round 6. That sounds pretty good. Before we move on and you say anything, Joe, I think Gibson's one of the easiest fades in draft.
I was gonna say you brought up that bad memories with the next CMC stuff. So Graham's taking this anyway. So Graham's the easy one to argue. I totally agree. That was a tough one for you. All right, Scott, Derrick Henry. He's the 6th overall pick, RB5. You guys are tied at 5-5. we're going to the last battle, okay? So either you're going to tie and I have to come up with a way to decide this, or one of you is going to take the last two and walk this off. Your turn to start, Scott. It's the top of the 9th inning, and you're going against Derrick Henry.
I didn't make this easy on myself, but it's tough to make an argument to fade a round one player, but you have to acknowledge he is a round one player, and there's just no way he continues with the level of production we've seen, which granted is obscene levels of production. Over the last 3 seasons, he ranks behind only Christian McCaffrey in fantasy points per game. He finished 9th in rushing yards last season, despite missing over half the season. In short, Henry is an unstoppable juggernaut, one of the greatest pure runners of all time and a fantasy superstar. There's no doubt about that. But his ADP, Graham, is RB3, the number 3 overall running back. And I have a number of points to make my case. For one thing, his schedule is significantly tougher. The second most difficult schedule overall, worth minus 1.00 fantasy points per game off of his average last year. But more importantly, the overall environment in Tennessee is likely to be significantly less hospitable without A.J. Brown, their star wide receiver. The offense is going to be worse. It means less efficient, fewer sustained drives, fewer red zone trips, therefore fewer fantasy points for Derrick Henry. Beyond just that, game script is going to be far less favorable for the most game script dependent running back in fantasy. Tennessee has won 73% of their last 30 games with Derrick Henry on the field. And over the past 3 seasons, Henry averages 22.8 fantasy points per game in wins, but only 11.8 fantasy points per game in losses. That's the difference between the overall RB1 in wins and the RB29 in losses. Vegas is expecting Tennessee to win only 53% of their games this season. Remember, down from 73%. So based on those win-loss splits, we should expect Henry to average 17.6 fantasy points per game. That's about RB9, RB10. So at an ADP of RB3, he seems exceedingly risky and massively overpriced to me in PPR leagues.
So you make a bunch of good points.
I do. I know.
But Scott, one thing you said earlier has stuck with me, that you want players on your fantasy teams that strike fear into the hearts of their opponents.
I mean, he will against the Jaguars, Graham.
Whoa. What?
Teams that Tennessee could actually beat without A.J. Brown. Treylon
want
Burks is basically a running back eating into his carries.
Alpha dogs. And you are fading the alpha dog in Derrick.
He's a big dog. I'll give you that.
That doesn't make any sense. That your whole line of logic here of wanting players that strike fear into the hearts of your opponent. Derrick Henry is that guy. He's literally like the poster child for that. And you're fading him? You're fading him, Scott?
In the 50% of games Tennessee is favored, he'll strike fear. But, up against a halfway decent to slightly above mediocre team, no, you're getting those 11.8 fantasy points per game. Too inconsistent, too volatile, too game script dependent. I need this point, Joe.
I'm with you, Scott. I take you. Your argument was fantastic. You know what I'm starting to realize here? This is like a tennis match. Where when you have the serve, it's hard to break serve. And you've broken each other once or twice, but Scott was coming from a place of dominance here, and I'm taking Dalvin Cook over Derrick Henry. And maybe that's stupid. I totally agree with Graham, because Derrick Henry is always part of a profile when it comes to Graham. Like, I fade him I didn't fade him last year, but I fade him every year, and then he runs for 500 yards in week 1, and I'm like, shit. Like, why did I do that? And like, my opponent has him. I always view Derrick Henry as like a square pick, and then he works out. But Scott, the point about Tennessee in my opinion, being and in Vegas's opinion, by the way, being a fading team is so critical here. Derrick Henry, there's picks I like better in the first round. Graham, it's the bottom of the ninth. You need a run. Scott's a shaky closer. He's going to walk a couple guys. Can you get the run across the plate? And you're doing it with Michael Thomas at bat. Let's see what you can do with that.
Listen, Michael Thomas had one of the best, if not the best, individual wide receiver seasons of all time. 2019 reset the record in receptions. But his quarterback was Drew Brees. He also still had an ankle. Do we know if Michael Thomas has an ankle anymore? He legitimately might not have any bone left.
That's more of an Edwin question, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll see if Edwin can give us a medical opinion on that.
The best bit of news, Joe, that we have seen on Michael Thomas literally for a year came out today of him jogging in a straight line. Great, he can jog still. But his quarterback has gone from Drew Brees to Jameis Winston, and it might be Andy Dalton. We don't know if Jameis Winston's going to be back for week 1. We don't know how many targets Michael Thomas is going to get. A big part of the reason why Michael Thomas was Michael Thomas in 2019 is sure, okay, he's great, whatever. He also got a 30% target share. We really projecting a 30% target share on a 650 pass attempt team like the old days of the Saints? Those old Saints aren't coming through the door, Scott. They aren't coming through the door, Scott. Michael Thomas is going to be a wide receiver 1A to Chris Olave and Jarvis Landry, some actual target competition on a run-heavy team, and people are still drafting him in the 6th round? People are still drafting him over Brandon Cooks, who is for sure his number 1 wide receiver on a very pass-heavy team. Now, obviously, I'm saying this tongue-in-cheek. Michael Thomas is still an alpha dog. But still, Chris Olave, Jarvis Landry, some actual target competition for him now. Quarterback play is way worse. He's barely played in the last 2 years, and when he did play last year, or 2 years ago, he wasn't himself still. I think you're buying Michael Thomas at maybe close to his ceiling based on this current Saints setup.
All right, Scott. You've got Graham. It's 3-2. Tying run on third base. 2 outs. You got to throw your best pitch here.
I got it. The last time we saw Michael Thomas, he had a tight end playing quarterback. And he had 30 catches for 343 yards through 4 games and a 76% snap share because he was hurt. So basically 114 yards per 4 quarters. That's pretty great, Graham. And then the year before that, he freaking led the league in receptions and receiving yards. No. Actually, the most receptions of any player in any season ever. Hey, Graham, are receptions valuable in PPR leagues? Because I forget. Are they valuable? Are they worth points in a PPR league? And I forgot something else, too. Maybe you can answer me. Does scared money make money? I forget, Graham. Did I write 50,000 words on how fantasy leagues are won on lost on Upside, or was it Floor? Which one was it? Does Upside win championships, or does Floor win championships? The 9th most fantasy points by any wide receiver in any season ever, his last full season, and this guy's going 2 picks ahead of Drake London, 4 picks ahead of Treylon Burks. Please. I'll eat that up all day.
Is Drew Brees walking through that door?
It doesn't matter. He had a tight end playing quarterback, and he still dominated. Jameis Winston at least plays the position. He's not some Mormon who has pictures and blackmail on Sean Payton, you know?
Latter day slash. See, here's the thing. Scott knows how to play to Dolan because latter day slash slander does a lot. However, I will also point out he's talking about Jameis Winston, a guy who in his last full season as a starter did a pretty damn good job getting fantasy production out of multiple wide receivers. I was sitting on the clock today in a best ball draft. And it was the 6th round. And I didn't draft Michael Thomas. But I gotta admit, I thought of it. And if I had listened to Scott, I might have pulled the trigger. Barrett blows a fastball by Barfield with the tying run on third base. It is 7-5, and he takes the 2 bars battle. We got to do this again. And by the way, I think I need to vet the player's selection at first, because I think both of you, if I'm allowed to throw a little bit of an insult out there, by the way, nice shirt, Graham. That's pretty badass.
Thank you.
If I need to throw I think both of you guys picked some people who are way too easy to argue for and hard for the other guys.
All of Scott's guys were easy, Joe.
I argued for Antonio Brown.
I mean, Antonio Brown was
except for Mr. Big Chest.
Yeah.
Whatever.
All right. Okay. It was 7-5. Barrett takes it. I hope everybody enjoyed this. Go to Underdog. I need to get off of here before Graham jumps through the screen like the little girl in the ring and like kills me. I wonder if Kukanis likes that movie. I'm not too sure. I'm sure we'll figure it out. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning into Worst Take, Take Battle, 2 Bars Battle, whatever the hell you want to call it. It's presented by fantasypoints.com and Underdog Fantasy. Use code FANTASYPTS and Underdog Fantasy. $100 deposit. Match up to $100. Fantastic deal. So you can go in and exploit these ADPs if you want to. That's our winner, Scott Barrett. Graham Barfield put up a valiant fight, but much like my Phillies, too little, too late. I'm Joe Dolan. I'm the most popular man in Houston, Texas right now, and the least popular man in Denver, Colorado. I'm going out of the country for the next week, but I'll probably still be around because I can't unplug. I hope everybody had a wonderful evening. Thank you to Kukanis behind the glass. Thank you to all our commenters. I hope you all enjoyed this, and have a great night.